Hey everyone, welcome back to another podcast episode. My name is John Venus, your host, and today I have a special guest. It's a huge surprise. His name is Dr. Venus, my brother.
Hello.
First time ever on the show. I'm just kidding. He's been on every single episode. So yeah, you have the record of the most consistent guest on this show. So congratulations.
Very honored. Thank you.
Yeah, you should be. This is the best podcast in the world. So yeah. Anyway, today we thought we'd bring you guys a little bit more of a different podcast. We wanted to talk a little bit more about judgment and how not to be afraid of being different, because I think that is one of the things that most people in society take very seriously. They are afraid of being different. They're afraid of being criticized. They're afraid of judgment in general for doing things a little bit differently. And people are scared of doing things their own way because they fear how other people will think of them. So this is a huge topic, obviously. And especially when you relate it to health, fitness, the vegan lifestyle. This is a huge problem that a lot of people deal with. So we got a lot of questions, regarding judgment, how to overcome it, how to overcome the fear of being different and all that kind of stuff. So why not talk a little bit about that? Because me and Leo, we grew up in a bit of a different way than most people, I'd say, which kind of, at least for me personally, led me to get an understanding of judgment and how people think. And, being the new kid all the time always puts you in a position where you have to face judgment pretty quickly. So we got a lot of that growing up. So we thought, why not share our experiences? But Leo, why don't you start with explaining what you think, people should do, first of all, to, take the first step to being okay with judgment or being okay with being different?
Yeah, so it feels really nice actually to talk about something that's not medical for once. So but like you said, it does have huge implications for mental health and for health in general. And it's something that's so common in society today and so many people have to deal with, especially in social media, like you said. And I think there's definitely so many things you can do. And this is why behavioral psychology and learning how our brains work is so powerful, because it can really change your life. So many of these things that we are feeling and that we are thinking comes from subconscious beliefs that sometimes we haven't even logically assessed in our minds. It's just things that has been bombarding us throughout our entire lives, just messages that we sometimes don't even register, and it just forms our beliefs without us even noticing. And then we start believing in things that are completely unrealistic. And this is one of the things I really love about social psychology and behavioral psychology, is it really allows you to understand yourself and to empower yourself to align your thinking with reality, basically. And that is what philosophy is. I used to be a huge opponent of philosophy. I thought, philosophy is for these people who are sitting on the clouds thinking of lulu la like so unscientific. But really, philosophy is the study of reality, and so you can actually learn a lot from the wisdom of people from the past and the mistakes that they made growing up. There's so many wise people in the past, and one of the most foolish things you can do in life is to think, I don't want other people's help. I'm just going to do and make all of the same mistakes that other people have made.
Do you have experience in that, Leo?
Oh, yeah, of course. Everyone does. Everyone does.
100%.
If you self-reflect, you will find a lot of mistakes. And in terms of judgment, I think that one of the first things I would say is realize that if other people are going to judge you no matter what you do.
First of all, let me ask you, have you ever felt like you had to deal with a serious amount of judgment ever in your life? Is there a certain point in time that you remember and recall growing up where you're like, struggling with it or noticing it for the first time maybe, and then, how did you go about that?
Yeah, I think in school, growing up, you definitely, most people will face judgment a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's just part of growing up. It's kind of a natural thing, really. You can preach, don't be judgmental, but people judge each other. It's a natural part of life. When you become aware of it, you can start to try to minimize it or try to do it in a more sensible way. But definitely growing up, I would come across it, and it became, I went into this phase where judgment almost made this counteractive attitude on the other extreme, where I was like, I don't care about anything. I don't care about anyone.
I remember that.
I will go to school wearing, your old, really big baggy shorts and my hair sticking straight up, and not like checking myself in the mirror. Just I don't give a,
yeah.
whatever word you want to say, put in there. I don't give any that about any opinions
Right.
whatsoever. And that's
You can curse on this show, by the way.
Oh,
just so
okay.
you know. Yeah.
Fuck.
There you go.
I finally got it
Dr.
out.
Venus coming out with explicit content for you guys.
So professional. But yeah, basically.
So is there one experience that comes to mind that you were like, where you were, because of that, carelessness or attitude, did you get to a point where you didn't want to at the end, or did you just learn to, be more open to other people and care more, or share, expand your heart and be more empathetic? Or how did that progression come along, and how did that affect your life in general? And just give me one specific story that comes to mind.
Well, yeah, the thing is, for me, it doesn't really, there's not a specific time. It was
Right.
more of a gradual thing
Sure.
for me that kind of increased over the years, and I became more and more extreme in this attitude. But I
Right.
can't tell you a specific, situation that resulted in the end after years and years of going through this path. And that was when we moved to the US. I was 15 years old.
Right.
And, that's quite a vulnerable age when you're in your teens.
Yeah, for sure.
And basically going to the US was a big cultural shock for me, having lived mostly in Europe.
Yeah.
And, for a bit in Brazil as well. But the culture was very, very different. And going into that, it's also very judgmental in many, many ways. And I got to a point where and I just want to say that this is the problem. This is the danger of going into the other extreme. If you're doing it from a place of insecurity, if you're going,
Right.
I don't care about anyone, I don't care about anything, I don't care about other people's thoughts. If you're doing that out of insecurity, it's not really going to help. You're just trying to shield yourself from the pain that is being inflicted on you. But if you actually accept those things and are honest with yourself and accept the fact that you are insecure, that's when you actually allow yourself to become okay with that judgment and actually grow out of it. So that point came for me towards the end of my high school, beginning of college, because throughout, and I haven't really told this to many people, but
that's why we're here, man. Podcasts.
In high school in the US, I got to a point where I didn't even know I had social anxiety until I went through med school, because through psychiatry you learn about all of these things, and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I had growing up in the US. And it's so common, actually. So many people have it. And it got to a point
Can
where...
you explain the feeling of social anxiety for people who may not have experienced it, or even for all the people who do experience it on a daily basis, just to let them know that they're not alone?
Well, social anxiety is basically just a very extreme version of what most people have, which is kind of the fear of judgment and the fear of humiliation and embarrassment, but it goes way overboard. So you'll be afraid of things that really bear no significance whatsoever. In my case, what ended up happening is I got to a stage in high school where I was so afraid to talk to people who I didn't know, that whenever I came in the morning during high school, there was 10, 15 minutes where people just sat around before going to class in the cafeteria, hundreds of people sitting in tables, and usually you have your little groups that you sit with.
Right.
And I was so afraid. I thought it was so dangerous, so uncomfortable. I was so fearful of talking to people I didn't know. I would walk straight through the cafeteria, not talk to anyone, go to the bathroom stall, sit in one of those bathroom rooms and play games on my phone until the first class started. And I thought that was more comfortable for me, to just sit by myself playing games every single morning, rather than just talk to people and face the fear of being embarrassed or being rejected by that little group that is already established. And I had ways of coping with that. I would tell myself I'm just not a very social person. I would tell myself, I'm just more of an introvert, or this is my personality.
You don't care.
I don't care. I just like playing video games and being by myself and doing sports. I'm not really a very social person. And these lies that you tell yourself are the most harmful, because you grow up believing this, and that it becomes like a negative spiral. You just go more and more into yourself. You isolate yourself more and more, and then it gets to a stage where it's really affecting your life. So once I really realized that actually I do want to talk to people, actually I do want to connect with others, and this is a need that I have, just like most people. The human animal is a very social animal. We do need connection. We do need contact with other people.
Right.
And once I realized that awareness, that self-honesty, that I told myself, hey, you are actually very insecure about this, and the only way you're going to, get forward is by accepting that and then working for it. But if you don't even admit to yourself that this is an issue, then you're never going to get over it. So that is the first and most important step by far.
Right. Yeah, and I think the fear of, talking, for example, public speaking is like a huge fear, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, going to a new school, meeting, your classmates for the first time is kind of like, the same level of discomfort as public speaking, in my opinion, more or less. Maybe not as much, depending on, everyone's different. But yeah, I do also, I have experience as well. Like, when I was a kid, we moved a lot. We started, like, I don't know how many schools we've attended growing up, probably like 20.
Lost count.
Yeah, like between 15 and 20 probably. So, every for each time that we switched school, we had to deal with a certain situation of being completely thrown out of a comfort zone and having to, adapt to a whole different kind of like jungle, right? Like we're just like zoo animals thrown into the wild.
Oh yeah,
like
if you don't believe that, just look at any child's school.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of freedom, especially in the schools where there isn't a ton of supervision,
exactly,
kids are savage.
Yeah, not anymore because everything's super controlled and everything.
Yeah.
But when we grew up, like I have this, like I think it was the first or second day of school in Norway. I was just like, I was a new kid. I was a little bit tan because we moved from the States. I don't know. We just had a vacation in Brazil or something, I think. So yeah, like people there were like super racist, like calling me, racist names and that kind of stuff, even though I'm white. They were calling me like different things. And the first day of school, I remember being chased by at least half of my classmates around the yard like crazy. Like I had to sprint. Like I remember being super proud because I was like the fastest. Like the adrenaline kicked in, man. Like I was running away from them. Yeah, it's like,
that's crazy.
So
actually, that reminds me. One time I did. This is not the second day of school, but this is one of the most vivid memories I have of one of our schools in Norway. And this was a very unsupervised, it was very like rule of the jungle kind of school.
Yeah.
We had a ton of outdoor time and very few teachers really supervising. It was a
Right.
huge area
That's
of
what I'm talking
playgrounds.
about. Yeah.
And one time I remember I was sitting in my class. I had this little building for my class where we were doing math class or something. And I was sitting by the window and I was just doing some exercises. And then I look out the window and I just see John sprinting. And then I look back and I see 4 guys sprinting after him.
It was definitely more than 4 guys, man. It was like the whole class almost.
No, but this was probably a different time.
Yeah,
or something,
it happened several times. So yeah.
But I was just like, whoa, what is going on there?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty bad. And on our school there was this tree of death, like what people called it, where there was like a tree in the middle of the schoolyard, and people used to pick on smaller kids and bring them to the tree of death, and then just like grab them by like 2 people grabbing them by each foot and then slamming their private parts into
it's horrible. It sounds like
tree.
Something out of a horror movie, to be honest.
Like that school is savage. It was like so much pornography, hacking,
class fights. I remember we'd have like class fights,
theft, everything. Like it was like, it's crazy. And that was in Norway.
This was in Norway. Yeah,
I know.
Crazy.
I've talked to a lot of people in Norway, and they're all shocked. So I'm sure that was like the most gangster school in the whole country, for sure.
Yeah, probably.
But the point I'm trying to make is that I've been bullied. I've been called, things, and I've also been a bully. I bullied other people for a little time, and then until I realized how bad I felt inside, and tried to fix the situation, that kind of stuff. But everything is out of insecurities, right? You're scared because of insecurities, and you bully because of insecurities. So overcoming that is super important, and I think it all comes from actually putting yourself out there, stepping out of your comfort zone, doing the things that you're afraid of, and just realizing that the worst that can happen is that you feel a little embarrassed or you get made fun a little. But I think it's just a mindset, just realizing that other people's opinions don't really matter. They don't have the full story. They don't understand you. They don't know you. So why would you value someone's opinion when they don't actually understand who you are as a human being? And that is just something that you have to train up and believe, because that is super important. And it's a truth. Like, no one knows you. Like, even, we're close brothers, but we don't know everything at all about each other. So why put so much weight? Why value someone's opinion and judgment that much when they don't even understand you? So that's the first thing I would tell you guys to focus on, just to change your mindset a little bit.
Yeah, I read a quote by Marcus Aurelius, is a famous philosopher, emperor of a Roman Empire long ago. That was exactly about that. It was saying something like,
I've always wanted to be a philosopher.
Oh yeah. Well, you can.
No joke.
You can.
When I was young, I really wanted to. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an architect. No, not architect. Archaeologist.
Archaeologist. Yeah.
Archaeologist, and I don't know. Those are the two things that I wanted to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically the quote was something like, for a species or man, for someone who really, values themselves more than anyone else, it is funny that we value others' opinions more than our own, right? Because
right.
if most people's self-interest is, this is flying around here. If most people's self-interest is really higher than the interest for other people, and then we're taking other people's opinions more seriously than our own, it's kind of a little bit backwards. But yeah, I think that is one of the key philosophies. The other few mindsets that I've come across that really help are, number one, don't, actually judgment and unjust criticisms can sometimes be a sign of respect, or that you've actually, there's a saying, nobody kicks a dead dog. Well, the thing is, if you're nobody and you have nothing, most people are probably not going to bother, criticizing you. But once, people get jealous so easily. Once you are doing something right, and other people's insecurities,
or different,
yeah, people reflect their insecurities onto you, and they do all of these bad things in order to make themselves feel better. So it can actually be a compliment in disguise when you are being judged and criticized by other people. So that's the second thing I would say. And the other thing as well is just to realize, how much is this actually worth? How much worry is this actually worth, right? Because when we're in the moment and when we're sitting there, we have this tendency to just, over amplify and just really make these things seem so important in our own minds. But then when you really think about 50 years from now, are you really going to be thinking back to this moment, thinking, wow, this was such a big deal in my life? Or, when you're on your deathbed, are you going to look back and be like, that was one of the decisive moments of my life, was when that person in my class, who I don't even remember their name right now, was judging me? It's right. Trying to remember these things. And that's it's so easy to get, too narrow in the situations and get too caught up in the small details of everyday life. But if you take the big perspective and you look at how important these things are in the big picture, you'll realize it actually does not matter even one bit.
You have to be okay with failing all the time. And a lot of people are scared of failing, right? Like, people don't want to try new things because they're scared of failing. And a lot of people think failure is this horrible thing that you should not, do. When in reality, the more you fail, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the better you're going to be, and the higher chance of success. So
there's a saying, right? There's no such thing as failing. It's just victory and lessons, right?
Yeah,
and that's
100%.
a really, really good mentality. And I think that, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think I just read this book that was talking about how Albert Einstein, he was a pretty smart guy, right? You think so?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, well, he was quoted to say that his conclusions were wrong 99% of the time. So he admitted to himself that he was usually, 99% of the time, he would be wrong.
And that's why he was a vegetarian and not a vegan.
Exactly. But basically, the moral of this story is that even the smartest people are wrong very, very often. So why would we expect to be correct? So that, if you're taking criticism as an opportunity to learn and as an opportunity to grow, it can actually be so helpful, because, if you just take the humble approach, right? I've been wrong many times before. I will be wrong many times in the future. Why should I expect to be right more than Albert Einstein, who said he was wrong 99% of the time? So if somebody has some criticisms, obviously you don't want to take things personally, but you can actually objectively take them as feedback in order to grow, in order to improve yourself. And
I mean, like the that's exactly what people need to understand. Like, people don't see you as a person who may have suffered from social anxiety and gone through all these difficult times, because when they see you now speaking on stage in front of hundreds of people in medical conferences and that kind of stuff, people just assume that you're just this natural talent and fearless, and you've always been that way. But it's like you say, you have to take chances, take risks, and learn and grow from it, because a lot of people just are stuck in the mindset of thinking that the way you are is the way you're always going to be, and that's not true. I don't recognize myself from four years ago. You don't recognize yourself from 4 years ago, and that's because we always keep challenging ourselves, stepping out of our comfort zone, learning new things, being humble enough to say that we're wrong and we don't know shit. That is so important. And there is no way I would have thought 4 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago that I would be doing certain things that I'm doing now. Like, I hated public speaking. My voice would tremble. I would lose my train of thought. I would just blank out. Yeah. And now I just improvise my speeches in front of 1,000 people without any issues. Like, I still get a little bit nervous here and there, but it's nothing compared to where I started. Yeah. And I thought it was impossible to get to this point, and now I realize how much better, even better I can get. So it's like, it's something that you have to get away from thinking. Don't think that you're stuck in the same way that you are right now. You can develop, you can learn, you can change, you can transform. It's just about keeping challenging yourself and doing these uncomfortable things until they become comfortable, until they become a habit. And all of a sudden, boom, you're a completely different person.
You can get addicted to this stuff. It's actually so much fun. When you start improving quickly and you start seeing yourself change, you see it yourself, it is so exciting. It is really motivating, and it just keeps you going further and further. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, personal development is my biggest passion. I don't talk about it because I don't want to be this, personal growth guru and that kind of stuff, because I think there is a lot of BS that is being talked about out there, and I don't want to be associated with that.
Give up sleep to be successful.
Yeah, because everyone's like trying to pretend that they're experts when in reality none of us are experts. Like, no one knows what the hell they're talking about. So it's just about sharing our thoughts and being honest and authentic, and that's the way to go forward. And that also comes in terms of accepting judgment and letting go of judgment and not judge yourself. Just being 100% authentic, being vulnerable enough to be 100% who you are, I think will also help a ton with that. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to add to that point is that, when we say that you don't know anything, it's in the big pictures. Obviously, people can't know certain things very well. You can have these little pools of expertise. However, to really, think that once I remember I asked someone in medical school, how much of all of the world's knowledge do you think you understand? And he said something like 60%. And I was like, wow, this guy thinks he's the biggest genius in the world. I was going to say maybe like 0.1% or something, that's being generous. And just think about all of the knowledge there is out there.
Exactly.
From science to geography to history to literature to any sort of knowledge, any sort of information. It's just almost, infinite. And then you have someone thinking that they know everything. And this is the ironic and really shameful part, is that, often the people who know the most are actually the most humble, and the most, they actually understand how little of the totality they actually know, while the people who are the most ignorant are the people who are the most confident in themselves and actually do think and believe that they know everything. And this is why it's so dangerous, because other people hear them talking so confidently.
We see this a lot in health and nutrition and fitness.
Absolutely, and social media as well. You see a lot of these people who are experts because they are so confident in every single opinion they say. They state it as if it was a fact. But you have to be very, very careful. You have to always remember, opinion and facts are two completely different things.
For sure.
And, if you get those two confused, you're going to really hurt yourself a lot of times, unfortunately. So that is one thing that I would say always remember. And the other part, I would say, to be able to use judgment to your advantage is to take away this whole moral blame and shame culture that has been laid. Because with time, I have learned that there's very little in life that is right or wrong, right? You always grow up with this right, wrong, good, bad type of mentality, black and white. but there's very little that you can honestly say that is right and wrong. And once you start questioning to yourself, like, why is this good? Why is it good for me to win this competition against this other guy? Why am I a better person because I beat him? Am I a better person because I got better grades than someone, or because I get paid more than someone? Is that really something that makes me a better person? And once you realize these things, what's important and what makes you better or worse, you realize there's very little in life that's actually better or worse. It's just different. And we don't have to attribute differences to be good or bad. Different can just be different. It doesn't have to be, this difference makes you better or worse. Again, it just makes you different. And let's just accept those differences as they are. And once you accept that, you can actually accept judgment way more easily. And for me personally, because yourself, when I was a bit younger, I was way more judgmental. I was way more black and white, and you're wrong, I'm right, blah, blah, blah. But you realize once you put yourself in other people's shoes and you really think about things, if you were in another person's circumstances and you had their body, you had their genes, you grew up under the exact same circumstances, you would essentially be that person. You wouldn't be magically different because you are a good person and that person was a bad person. And this is uncomfortable to talk about because, a lot of people realize, well, the same can be said for criminals, right? Well, if you grew up in those shoes, if you had the same exact life situation, you would be that criminal. You would be exactly. So who am I to sit here and say that I am better than that person? It does not make any sense. So once you realize that, you become incapable of judging people harshly, because you realize, actually, if I were in their shoes, if I was born into that family, if I had experienced the same circumstances, I had to go through the same hardships, and I had the same mentality, the same psychology, I would be that person. And that for me is one of the biggest realizations.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, like, for everyone listening, it's possible to, get to the next level. It's possible to change how you think. It's possible to get to that place where, like Leo was saying, to the place where you realize that we're essentially all the same, and it's just, compassion and love and positivity that, is the most important thing, and human collaboration rather than, conflict and that kind of stuff. But, everyone listening, you have to know that it's hard. It's hard to change your personality. It's hard to change who you are. It's hard to grow and, stay focused and, find that, energy to do things that you want to do. But, there is no way to do it unless you put in the work, and you have to realize that you have to force yourself to do it. It's hard work. This is not something that you'll wake up one day and feel motivated to do. This is day in, day out, 24/7. Try to do as much positive for yourself, for your family, for your environment, for the animals, whatever your passions are. Try to do your best every single day, a little bit, better than the day before. And if not, it's okay. You're going to fail constantly, but just realize that it takes work to upgrade yourself, just like with anything in life, but it's worth it. I mean, a lot of people will meet me in events and say how honored they are to meet me, which is, it makes me feel good, and it's a big ego stroke. But, people don't realize that I was whispering in my camera, like super scared of everyone in the streets looking at, like, judging me for vlogging and talking to a little camera that only cost me like $100. Like, I'm a whole different person, and that is why I know that it's possible for every single person, no matter where you are in your situation, how unfulfilled or unhappy you feel. I know that you can just design your future and design the person that you want to be. So just keep that in mind. It is possible. I promise you that. We're both testaments, and we know so many other people that have a similar story. I mean, every successful person that you look up to started somewhere, and they had to work their face off to get to where they are right now. So it's not going to be any different for you. It's all possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. That reminds me that is one of the best put ways I've ever heard that said. And I would say the summary that I read recently that fits in perfectly with what you're saying was that I recently heard that, it's not about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. And I think that fits perfectly with what you're describing just there.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's it for this podcast episode. Let us know how you like this episode. Let us know what you want us or me to make in the soon coming future, or whatever it's called, in the near future. Let me know in the comment section below if you're watching this on YouTube or on Instagram. That's pretty much it.
Peace out.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Peace out. Bye-bye.